Hello and welcome to Fire in the Belly. Today we have another boardroom talk with myself in the hot seat, and Heather Lundy is holding the question board. So I'm getting to go under the mic again. So thank you very much, Heather, for enabling this to happen.
Thank you very much for having me on, Pete. Congratulations to you. I mean, over the past week, you've celebrated your 100th episode live, which was fantastic. And I suppose it caused me to kind of think or want to hear from you. If you'd really share with us what you've learned in setting up the podcast and in the first 100 episodes. Pretty broad.
Yeah. What have I learned? I've learned a huge amount. There's so much. Because people, and I've had a few people going, what's your favorite episode, or what, and that's a bit like, I don't know, saying, who's your favorite child, or what, there's just different things for different times. My own evolution, my first couple, I would listen back and cringe, and you're like going, oh God, you didn't ask that, or, what way did you do it, or whatever. Because I funny, and this analogy sort of crept into my head this week, but it's a bit like a scuba diver, and you sort of, you're in some nice country somewhere and you decide to go diving. And so you go and you sort of sign up and you rent a space on a boat, and then they give you oxygen tanks. So you're sitting there all clumsy. You're literally out of water, but you've got all this gear. You've oxygen tanks and you've masks and wetsuits and weights and all stuff's going on, and they're shouting instructions at you and don't do this and do this and all the rest and everything else. And then at some point you basically have to backflip off that boat. You've got to sit in the side and just fall back, and just you're going to hit the water. And suddenly then you go from this awkward, clumsy gear all over the place to suddenly you're actually in the correct environment. But at that point, you kind of, a bit like when you fall or an accident or something happens, what's the first thing you do? You sort of, you mentally do a check and kind of going, right, okay, am I in one piece? Yes. Okay, I'm still breathing. That's a good start. And then you quickly you do a mental check, right? Has any of my arms fallen off? Has a leg, am I in pain? Do I feel pain? No, I think I'm okay. And you just that massive adjustment period. But the point being, I suppose, when it's kind of that feel the fear and do it anyway. So, it's kind of going, I want to have you on the interview and in the podcast and some of the early ones. And you're sort of going, okay, I'm now interviewing people about this and it's going through. But somewhere deep down in me understood that actually Fire in the Belly is far bigger than me. And I don't mean that in a sort of, not the opposite of an egotistical way. I can't even think of the word. It's, that's not me saying, oh, look at me, I'm trying to downplay my own self.
With humility, with humbleness,
yeah.
Really. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's, like I say, I'm not sort of seeking attention, going, oh, listen. But it's kind of, I genuinely think that I know I'm going to go a hell of a long way on this journey. But sitting down, and even from the very first interview, what was supposed to be a half-hour chat was literally, and I'll look back at it and it's like almost 3.5 hours. It was crazy just sitting down. And the feedback from the very first interview with my brother-in-law, it kind of was, I really enjoyed that. And you kind of go, okay, that's interesting. And that's the one thing I've sort of found is generally our favorite subject is ourselves. And there's different ways, you can kind of go, oh, well, not everyone, you realize also not everyone loves themselves. There's so many insights here. Typically I sort of describe the show as being for successful people. And success can be the fact that you're alive today. It could be that you've X amount of pounds in the bank. It could be that you've achieved whatever. But also you get to a lot of people, and I hear a lot of feedback and people going, I had everything. I had what I wanted, but yet I had nothing. And that also is so telling. It's like a loud noise in an empty room. And people are sitting there going, I really thought this is what I wanted. And I've got what I wanted, or, it's so enlightening. So people by nature of being on the podcast, I would describe them as successful. And that could be that they've come through this. It could be that they've realized this. And the expression almost of, from great overwhelm comes great change. it is that thing that they've reached a point in their life of saying enough. It is just, for me, it was that moment of scratching my head and going, I just, it was confusion. I had to sort of say, I just don't know. I've met some super successful people even before the podcast, and they're going, I'm turning up at work more hours in the day than they are. I don't have anywhere near as much, the sort of, and you take Richard Branson is probably one of the best known globally person, and that he's involved in something like 400 odd companies and, does all this. And yet he spends apparently half his day windsurfing around his bloody island. And you're kind of going, okay, the man has a few more things on his plate than I do, but yet he's doing that. And so you ever sort of go, listen, my head is sore from banging my head off the wall. There's something not right here. And that's a bit of a common theme when you look at a lot of the interviews. People are going, I had to go to the dark place. And then from the dark place, I was then able to sort of use that. So there's several layers. Once you've been there and you've decided enough, I need to change this, and it's very common in coaching and other things, whereas people aren't ready to listen. And the sort of almost the description is it's not bad enough yet. Where good is okay. How's life? Oh yeah, it's good. Okay, you need to be in pain before you will say good is not enough. I do not accept good. I accept great. I accept awesome. I accept so much, but I don't accept okay. I don't accept good. Good is not good enough. Because, what do you want to do? Do you want a 5-star meal or do you want a 3-star meal? Well, of course you want the 5-star meal, but you kind of go, but yeah, what if, I mean, kind of my food's all right and my job's okay and my life's, oh yeah, it's okay. Listen, why would I upset things? Whereas if that suddenly comes under threat and, you have to actually slow down and, there's things changing your life, well, suddenly going, actually, do you know what? This time we're going to pitch, we're going right to the stars, so you kind of, I've only actually met, I think it's 1 or 2 people that actually didn't have that, I'm going to say damage in their life, if that's maybe in the right word or not, but that sort of point they can, they point back at and, use that as their reason why. And the other thing I've seen is when people are talking about that, so that's the reason why. So we are typically pain-based creatures. So 80% roughly is we're motivated 80% by pain typically and 20% by pleasure. So that's really useful. So saying, well, why do you want to do what you do? I never want to be where I was before. Okay, well, that's pain driven, and that's you're pushing away from something. I will never be that poor. I'll never be that vulnerable. I will never be that weak. I'll never be that tired, etc., etc., etc. So that makes sense up until the point that you get so far away from that source that it's almost foreign to you, saying, well, I will never be at that stage in my life again. But when you've accelerated so much, you eventually go on, well, I can't even imagine why I would even think about doing that. The problem is then that's almost you're at the furthest point away from your motivation then. Saying, why do I jump on stage, or why do I make the extra phone call or send the extra email? Because you kind of go, well, it's because I don't want to be potentially wanting to end my life again. You go, well, listen, where I'm at, I couldn't be any further from wanting to end my life. I'm exactly the opposite. I am living my life. I am be life. I am the whole thing. So that's when you move to actually a point, and you see a physical flip. And when people are going, I am pleasure based. And that's when you start asking the question, going, well, what is my potential as a human being? Am I grateful for everything around me? So suddenly you get this gush of energy, thankfulness. You kind of go, God, how lucky are we? And then this level of service comes into play. This level of legacy starts to kick in. And I mean, there's so many people, but I suppose with the 100th episode, I was very fortunate to have, Crystal Hansen, Mark Victor Hansen, Donna Kennedy, Pat Slattery, and each one of them are huge in their own fields. but the overall thing there is of gratitude, of, just even accepting to come on the call. I mean, that's the thing. And Mark and Crystal's way of just their speaking, it's yes, I'm here to be of service, and you know warmest gratitudes, and just beautiful words. It's just even interacting with them as humans is fantastic. And you kind of going, wow, is that not pleasure based? So to me, that's success at the next level. So that's the common entity I see with a number of people on the show, whereby it's not just a case of going, I want to be rich because I never want what I didn't have, or etc. But when they sort of get to the stage and they built up momentum, that they've taken it to the next level, it's kind of going, I want to serve. I want to be of service to everyone around me. And I know that actually it's kind of the point where money becomes, I wouldn't say money doesn't become pointless, but it just flows, because they are their true selves. They are just giving so much service, so much energy, so much positivity, that actually their wants in life are very, very basic. But the way the universe and the way things going is, people want to be around them because they're radiating such energy. And then by very nature is, they'll write a book and it will be extremely successful, because people, they're actually enlightened by that energy. And so it goes. So suddenly their book is successful. They're asked to speak, and they're paid to speak, and they're paid to do this, and they're paid to do that. And suddenly they're actually generating this wealth, which then they apply and saying, well, I want to give this to others. I want to pass this energy on to others. And the more they try and give away, the more that keeps coming back. And suddenly you can see how it's the direct opposite of saying, well, I don't want to die. Suddenly it's going, I want to live. Not only live, I want to, feeling somebody else's excitement, energy, beliefs, all the rest. And that's the next level. And the weird thing with the show, and some people will know, and I talk to pretty much all the guests about it, is we do have what I would call like a 20 to 30% spoil rate. And that came into play sort of fairly early on. Again, it was unintentional, but it started off, and it could be just audio quality. It was poor. That usual, anything from when we were doing these all in person, it could be that somebody interrupted, or batteries ran out, or something. All the sort of the basic stuff. But then you also people go, gosh, I didn't, because of the extended period of time, it has a certain power that actually people, so the first 20 minutes, half hour, you're talking consciously. That's the stuff that, people hear every day. And that's kind of, that just rolls off the tongue. I am who I am. What do you do? What age are you? Where do you live? Blah, blah, blah. Then you get to that sort of comfortable spot where you're kind of talking mid-conscious, where you're sitting there going, no, this is fun. I'm actually enjoying talking about this. And, I've got sort of almost got past the warm-up stage. And it's that feeling, the fear is in the first 20 minutes, half hour of just chatting, and they've got this response and everything's okay. They slip into the bed and get comfortable. And you did it in your own interview, Heather. I mean, when you were talking, I could you physically sat back at one point, and I knew we had slipped to a different level of consciousness, and it's just that it's beautiful, because suddenly you realize at that point trust has been built. So suddenly people are, beforehand they're almost tense and going, what's he going to say next? What do I do? What do I do? What if he says this? And what if that happens? And what if I accident, all these things, what if in a negative form is floating through the head. So eventually when you sit back and kind of going, actually, I quite like this. This is quite, this is fun. I'm enjoying it. And I feel, I feel respected. I feel trust, that I'm, life's going to be okay. And this interview is going to be good. So people then sit back and suddenly they just relax a bit more into it.
I was going to say, I find it interesting, because obviously I do know you and I do trust you. And yet those first 20 minutes, I would say it was more about fear and lacking trust in myself. What am I going to say? Overthinking it. So I think that's probably going on for the guests as well. And then I know exactly the moment whenever I just went, oh, and I forgot. We just had a chat, and it was a really good experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like with a friend or anything, when, and it can be a subtle little sign. It could be a deep breath. It can be just, a lot of people I notice, because especially with Zoom, the way it's evolved, people just relax back in the chair, because the mic volume changes, a lot of things change. And suddenly they're like, this is okay. we're in a sort of a safe space. It was kind of like, it's like 0 to 30 in the car. The hard bit is revving and changing gears and all the rest, and everyone's going, "What do I do?" And blah blah blah. There's so many interactions going on, and then you get into that sort of slight, that sort of 40 to 50, or sort of 30 to 50 side, where again it's not as lumpy, and you kind of, you're getting momentum, and it's okay, and we're kind of traveling, and life's good. And then what tends to happen after that is that we get into like a subconscious level. And for anyone that's not used to that, it's just, I would kind of almost describe it as, it's just like flow. And when someone's passionate about something, generally, I know for me, my face goes red because I'm talking, 1,000 words, more like 15,000 words an hour. I'm kind of, I get very expressive. I get, my language speeds up, everything speeds up. And so, but when you get to that subconscious level where, you're thinking as fast as you're talking, which is quite something, because then you get a lot of people in this saying, I've actually never told anyone this, or I hadn't thought about that before. Because once the words come out, suddenly, they can hear it through their own words and kind of go, what did I just say? And it's almost like an out of body experience of going, hold on, did I just say that out loud? Did I? And you catch yourself and going, oh, wow. Okay. And I'm generally sitting there as well. And because whether unintentionally I might have an expression on my face, or through the questioning, I then circle back and going, you said that, can you clarify? And they're kind of going, yeah. But that flow state, it's you're getting close to it. Is kind of, it's a bit like a hypnotism type. It's, and I'm always cautious because people sort of have different views on that, but it's, you're in a flow state, you're in just this almost unconscious, it's good, and it's when people talk about their passions, they just they just are, they talk about it, and they can talk all day long. Well, that's almost the point for me where they're at, uh, a point of talking about their fire in the belly. You're almost, you've cleared the slate of all the obvious stuff they want to say. So suddenly they kind of go, right, I've got all that off my chest. Right now we're just having a really deep chat. And then suddenly it's like, wow, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that before. Or, and they hear themselves, and suddenly they're still in flow. And I've kind of preempted them, but more or less saying this will be a 90 or 2 hour interview. So they're sort of getting an hour in, and they're kind of going, I normally wouldn't speak any more than this. So I've kind of run out of my usual repertoire. And then suddenly I'm being asked to dig deeper, and I've said quite a lot already, and I feel trusted. I feel it's warm. I feel safe. And he has said to me, if the interview doesn't serve me, that we won't publish. So I kind of feel okay. And it's generally also at this point that people say, I say to people, listen, swear, don't swear. That's your choice. Um, YouTube, Facebook, all the rest will pick it up. Their sort of automatic voice recognition will pick up those swear words, and they'll tag it as explicit. I don't mind. The podcast is an adult podcast. But I get people saying, no, I don't swear, suddenly become potty mouth. Suddenly, and you kind of go, could I just say, you're the person that said, I don't swear, that's not my thing. And I had this yesterday, and someone very well spoken suddenly is putting in F-bombs and S-bombs all over the place. And you kind of go, I didn't want to break their state, because, suddenly going, yeah, thanks for the not swearing bit, so, but that's suddenly you're actually getting to their most raw, fun selves. But you can see that they're buzzing because they're in flow, and that they're being heard.
So why do you think then the swearing, is it just because they're in that, they're excited, they're passionate, or why do you think that happened?
I think when people feel they're, they have to stand to an agenda, or they're being listened to, or they've got to be very mindful of what they say to people. Suddenly, well, and when you think about it, it's kind of going, well, I wouldn't swear in front of my parents, or I wouldn't say this, or it's sort of slightly outside of my environment. So suddenly when they're kind of going, I can just say it. They just unintentionally, it's like the words are out before they even say it. And sometimes people realize, and they kind of go, oh God, I've suddenly got, I've suddenly gone on this swearing match. But I would say that's just it's almost the beauty of an expression. You know, some swear words are fantastic because it's kind of like almost a naughty thing to say, but it also expresses how you're feeling so wonderfully, because it's kind of going, it's really naughty, but whatever your word is. Um, and that's how also you start to know that actually they're slipping into this place of really warmth, trust, chatting friends. No different to, if you were with friends that you loved and knew for years and all that, suddenly your true self starts to shine through. The rebellious, you're doing stuff that's naughty, and you kind of go, God, imagine if somebody saw me now. And that's both wonderful and heartbreaking at the same time, because it shows that actually there's a part of you that the world doesn't see, and there's a part of you that the world does see. Um, I'm not saying we should all become potty mouth, but it's the excitement of, is just being expressive, is being, saying your true self. And, Tony Robbins talks about this, talk about your inner warrior and things like that, and just let it out and just roar, and it's not that I think you always want to be this warrior and, running around the streets with, your shields and a big sword. But when there is a pent up, it's a pent up energy where you haven't had a chance to express it, well, then suddenly it becomes like, I'm in this warm, safe environment. I know it's an extended period of time. We've already talked about some fairly deep stuff. This person's actually listening to me, and I have a window here, and that's all coming out. And they kind of, like I say, suddenly they're just, it's kind of quite bare, quite vulnerable. And it is a vulnerable state when people going, geez, I don't know if I should have just said that. And that's I get, the end of the interview, and I say to everyone, listen, it has to serve you. I'm not out here for an exclusive. And for that reason, I get a lot of people going, listen, what was said was the right thing. It's kind of going, it's outside of my character, which is interesting character, and their public face, if you like. But actually, I feel so warm. I feel so connected. That was absolutely the right thing to do. So that's a lot of feedback I get. I mean, people go, do you know, I'll say it because people generally say to me, and even these are well-spoken people going, this is right up there in my interviews. This is probably certainly top three, if not my, my most favorite interview ever. Which is powerful, because I'm kind of, my imposter syndrome does jump in and kind of going, I've had zero interviewing skills. I have, my editing skills, my radio skills are poor, all the rest. But at the same time, I'm grateful enough to sit back and say, listen, it appears to be a gift within me, and I'm very, very grateful for that, and just keep doing it. And the stone becomes rounded the more interviews I do, like a pebble in the stream, because of all the sort of the content, the stuff, all the rest. It's finding it's getting better and better, and audio quality, background quality, question quality, everything else, and knowing when to start and when to not. So that, I can't actually remember the original question, but the other thing is, I do say to people is starting off there with a blank sheet. I tell people I have my favorite thing, which is an A3 pad. And I literally start off with the name on the top left, and that's it. So the agenda is not, okay, here's your 50 questions. Yeah. You're kind of going, we go where we go, and that's okay.
Yeah. And you do have questions, I suppose, that do repeat across the interviews, but actually quite often what I see is that you're responding, you're picking up on something that's been said. It's obvious when you're being interviewed by you that you're listening. And I hear that over and over. As I've spoken to people, a few people recently who've been interviewed by you, and they have said to me, how much they enjoyed just knowing that you were listening, because you didn't just go, thank you, and on to the next question. It's that space that you create. Around that, you were talking there about the fact that people do, and I've heard this so often, and you've covered a bit of it there, but people really often say, I can't believe I said that. I've never told anyone that before. And those times, I remember feeling a real warmth towards those people, that they've said something and you're feeling that connection to them, and then they're saying, goodness, I've never said that before. Can you talk about how that feels for you as the interviewer when that happens?
Um, I'm extremely grateful for that. That is, it's such a position of privilege. Quite often it actually feels, I'll be honest and say there's times that I feel I don't deserve it. But the analogy that's been floating around in my head, actually, and funny you say this, the analogy that's been floating around in my head the last while is become, if I can become the best mirror holder that I can, that is actually one of the most powerful things you can do. So that is holding the space. So you're holding the mirror up for people, and if you want to visualize it, you put it into a dressing room, and it's like a private dressing, and you kind of going, I'm going to hold the mirror up, and you're going to basically talk about things, and be there and be vulnerable, and you're seeing the reflection back. Suddenly you're hearing your own words, and you're kind of, it's kind of this weird sort of going, gosh, I hadn't thought that, I hadn't seen that, and all the rest. But that you have the safety and the confidence of the environment and the person that's holding it there. And I've said it before, people come away going, God, that's, it's been so lovely talking to you, and it has. And I've sort of connected with them on the deepest level. It's not an even connection per se in terms of exchange of information, but it's an even in terms of depth of connection. You don't have to always speak to connect or to be heard. It can be a feeling, can be a sense, can be something else. So that warmth and that sort of trust, I treat it as respectfully as I can. And again, that's why we've built almost the show promise. I said, listen, go to sleep tonight and wake up tomorrow and either listen back or get somebody to listen back and go on. The key question is this going to serve you? Because if it's something you're embarrassed by, or you won't do it, well, what's the point? You're not going to share it. So I mean, the show has a purpose in terms of sharing and getting the message out there. So if it's not something you're proud of, let's re-record it. Let's do that. And it might be some of the most powerful experiences I have had will never be heard by the public. And that's something. In terms of the point of that interview and that service was, it will serve the person who has spoken, or me potentially. So that was the intention for that day. That interview will cause ripples that nobody will ever know about, and that in itself is absolutely beautiful. I say it's just some feedback. I'm literally welling up talking about it, but some feedback I've had this week. Again, it's an interview that won't go to air, but it's caused a ripple in their life, that they have connected with people that they haven't. They mirrored the method of the show, if I put it that way, in terms of creating space, listening, with the intention not of responding, listening with the intention of clarifying or delving or finding out more. Being very, very clear about that, going without judgment and things like that. And, the length of the response and the email that I got back and the words used and everything else, I know exactly. I don't know what was said, obviously, but I certainly know in terms of, it's been like when I know when somebody's got fire in their belly. You just know, and you're just going, you love what you do, don't you? And with this email, it was that I know how deep the connection you have just rebuilt. And this was with a member of their family that they hadn't been connected to for many, many, many years. And you kind of going, that was from, I think for them, it was a 3-hour conversation, they said. And just said it was something else. and I'm extremely grateful that actually that one has triggered the other. Our conversation, like I say, which will never go public, but that actually triggered something with them, which actually caused them to have a conversation, which again will never go public, but has changed things down the line. And for that, I can't fathom the ripples that are being caused. Um,
That's
yeah,
very, yeah, that's life changing, not just for those two people and yourself who have the
yeah.
privilege of being the person who heard that person who was then able to do it for somebody else. But if you think within a family, and the ripple is exactly right, how far and how wide that has the potential to go, and it's happening.
I mean, actually, the TED, the TED sort of mantra, is ideas that change the world. That's actually kind of how I feel about it. It's going this thing, and I call it a bit of a thing because it's kind of going. It is a bit like it's like a Great Dane pup or a baby giraffe. I mean, they're just awkward. They're just it's like its head's too big and its feet's a bit gangly and it's sort of wobbling all over the place. That's kind of how I would liken myself coming into the interview space. Um, you're kind of going, oh, geez, that was a bit rough, and but the intention's there. The listen, and there may well be something in that because it's not polished, or it's coming in a very unassuming way, that actually that's possibly is disempowering in some people. Like I say, the another interview I had this week, and someone who's very well spoken, um like I said, an hour in, and I know because they told me afterwards, saying it's just so disempowering. It's like going, I speak for a living, and yet an hour in, I'm kind of going, I'm telling you more than I tell my counselor. I'm telling you more than this, and it's like going, what the hell did you just do? And I go, I just asked the questions. You did it to yourself. And they were so deep questions, and you go back and I was kind of, what question did I ask? Sometimes I don't even know. I'm just following the thread. And going, actually, my question wasn't that deep. My question was open enough to allow you to take the deep route, you know. Um, and that's something I've learned to trust, is actually, because I've sort of a nice question again to get people to go into that period, saying, talk to us about your mini self, or mini Heather.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think I did it with yourself.
You did, yeah.
Rather than say, talk to us about potentially 7-year-old, or be specific. Do you know what I mean? If you talk to us about the mini version of you, now they may well take you to when they were 5. They may well take you to when they were 12. But by asking that question in that way, I've not forced them into a particular time zone. I've not forced them anywhere. And some people will say, well, what do you mean? Other people will just automatically snap into, do you know, I was a great kid and I did this, did this, did this. Someone else will go on, listen, I was 12 and this was going on in my life and all the rest. So it's amazing what comes up. And I didn't ask them to tell me what significant life event happened at 12 or whatever it was. I just asked a blank question and allowed them to interpret it the way they wanted to interpret it. So open questions. Again, I've people said to me, you're asking really deep, and they are, I suppose, deep questions. But it's that, as a kid, if ever you had it, that you had a jumper or something that was a loose thread, and usually your parents or your mother, or whoever, saying, don't pull the thread because they know it unravels. It's like if you keep pulling it, and it's fascinating as a child, you're like going, what? Look, if I pull this, it keeps going and keeps going and keeps going and keeps going. So as a child, you're like going, well, of course I'm going to pull the damn thing. And that's almost that childlike curiosity is kind of where I've sort of found it's going, that actually if I keep pulling it, and people are going, people almost go, God, you're forcing me to go here. And I was like going, no, I'm not. I'm listening. You've taken yourself there. I'm still listening and I'm curious, and I will likely take you another question in. But you're taking yourself there. So it is that, it's that unintended power that actually people are putting themselves there. And it is, I think that's sort of to try and reflect back a bit. It's kind of going, that's where I think people aren't heard enough. They've never had a chance to explore that in a safe way. They've never had a chance to actually sit down long enough without being bombarded with a solution, a judgment, an opinion, whatever. So the fact they just keep pulling the thread and going, I can't believe you're making me go here, but they still keep going. I say to anyone, if there's anything you don't want to talk in the pre-recording, in the notes, in terms of when you're booking on and all that, saying, if there's anything you don't want to talk about it, without stating the bleeding obvious, don't talk about it, or let me know and we will avoid it like the plague.
I think you actually said it in that way. Don't talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
Because people go, well, I don't want to talk about this and don't want to talk about, and again, that's the other thing is saying, listen, we are not going to edit this. We will edit this for sound. We will not be taking chunks out and all the rest, because your interpretation of what's good to go or safe or helpful may be different to mine. You might think, well, that's the pivotal point in my life, and I'm kind of going, I don't know if that's the thing to share, so let's chop that out. So there's purpose in a pause. There's when someone presents a solution, you kind of almost need to know their version and their facts of how they got to it. To simply turn up and going, I'm the best speaker on stage, or I published this book. And you kind of going, okay, did you bang it out in 2 weeks? Or is this like a 20-year journey story that was triggered by an event from here and all that? So you don't know. So, to just sort of take the solution or the book or whatever it is without asking them to sort of unravel it a bit is, you haven't heard them. You actually haven't. And no different in life, if people do things a certain way, rightly or wrongly, and you kind of go, but if you explain why you've done it that way, well, then suddenly people go, actually, since you've explained it in your words, I can understand why you felt that way, because you've just presented me with the facts, beliefs, expectations in your eyes. You were tired, this was happening, somebody had let you down, stuff had happened, life had happened, mummy had said this, daddy had done that, whatever it is, and 50 reasons. And, so you kind of go, yeah, I kind of see where you're at now. And that also is quite impactful for people, because suddenly they're kind of going, do you get what I mean? And you kind of go, yeah, I do. Before, if I hadn't have been listening, I would kind of going, and then they went and did that, and it's going, well, I wouldn't have done that now. You kind of going, how do you know? A story I'd shared earlier on this week, and I would consider myself a fairly good parent. I'm not going to win any awards. That's okay. I'm me, they're them. But even with my wife and the kids, we used to say, listen, we're rational people, we're professional, we're very fortunate. And we would have to say, listen, we cannot speak about parenting after 9 o'clock at night, especially when the kids are young, because you don't become rational. You become tired. You become, and you become this crazy person going, and the smallest thing can tip you over. And you kind of go, well, I wouldn't have folded the cloth like that. How could you do something like that? And you kind of, because tiredness has kicked in, haven't been heard. They looked at you funny. The kids had cried. Somebody had launched their dinner across the room. When you see all that, I now have a deep found respect for parents. I have a deep found respect for single parents. I have a deep found respect for people who are doing things and the odds are stacked against them, because you suddenly have an awareness or knowledge of what they've gone through. Whereas it was quite interesting. Someone actually shared with me on a podcast, and they talked about being homeless, and they became an alcoholic. And so the assumption would be that they became an alcoholic because of their situation, because they were homeless. And you kind of go, yeah, I can understand that. But then they're saying, being drinking alcohol like that was the cheapest way to be warm at night. You're kind of going, okay.
It's core need, yeah. Needs fulfilled, heat, shelter, yeah.
It's kind of going, it's the drink makes them feel good, but it's the warmth. Suddenly going, their body drinking, neat spirits. So you kind of going, okay, that's a different perspective. I drink to physically stay warm, to stop myself from hypothermia at nighttime. So you kind of, it's just a very different way of looking at it. It's kind of going, they're not drinking to forget. They're not drinking because necessarily, now, listen, everyone's different, but this particular person's story was, they're saying they didn't realize that actually me being homeless, to drink was the cheapest way to be warm at night. But yet then everyone would sort of jump on the bandwagon and go, well, you're an alcoholic, you're this, if you didn't drink, you'd do all this. And his thing is going, if I didn't drink, I could well die of hypothermia. So when you suddenly see that perspective, you're kind of going, okay, I mightn't agree with it, but I can understand it, or I can see your perspective on it. Suddenly I have a deep found respect for you, or I have a different respect for you, if that makes sense. Because I'm not either sort of praising it or condoning it. I'm just saying it's until, it's the old adage, until you walk a mile in another man's shoes, you really can't make a judgment. So no different than with the podcast and the show, when you talk to people and they're explaining that event, without jumping in and saying, well, I wouldn't do that, or you should try this, or, going into solution mode, no different to Men Are From Mars and Women for Venus and all the rest, is if you can hold that space that actually is help them to actually pin the things together and sort of understand, and understand why. And there's also what I love about it is when you ask the question, was that a cause or was that an effect? Sorry, was it a cause or a symptom? Sorry. So I've likened it before to saying depression I now see as a symptom. You don't catch, it's not like a virus, you don't catch depression, and even depression itself, it's a mood. It's not, again, you can't sort of go, yeah, it's virus ABC. It's a state of mind. It's a number of things, but chances are that has been triggered by something, and that something could be huge and traumatic, or it could be the most unobscure, random, gentle thing. But it was enough that it sat outside your value set that actually that sort of triggered a chain of events. So the actual cause was, it could be a death, it could be a bad mark on an exam paper, it could be a negative comment, it could be a funny look, it could be, an accident, it could be 50 billion things. That's the cause, but the symptom then has evolved, and again, through the years, it's sort of belief on belief on belief and things like that, and eventually, like a tree, if you nail something in a tree, eventually you'll see this knot, and it forms this whole outer casing to try and hold it, or trying to expel it from itself, but it's just, it sits there. So understanding that too, that actually, what's the root cause, and again, people, to me it makes sense, but people just have never sat down long enough to go, oh my god, that's looking at this from the cinema, sitting in the cinema seat as opposed to in the screen or in the film, that bird's eye view, you're sort of going, I've never connected those dots. How? And you can see the literal confusion on their face, or you can see the patterns of kind of going, every 7 years I do this. I change career every 7 years. It's like 2 years of adjustment and then 5 years of stability and then 2 years of adjustment and five. And when like say if you're listening and you're not trying to find a solution, you're just trying to sort of get the best description for them to do that, then suddenly, like I say, light bulbs are going off and they're going, I have never thought of that before. And hence, in a very, very long way, when people going, I've never thought about that, or that's a really interesting question, or there's a point actually Pat made on a talk we did yesterday. And it sort of triggered a thought in me in terms of maybe asking a question is actually a way of trying to explain an answer. So when someone sort of says, how do you feel? And sort of, I don't know. And you kind of go, maybe asking how they feel is the wrong question, because they do feel. We all feel. Of course we feel. Everything feels. They just haven't been asked the right question to help them to do it. So when someone says, that's a great question, they genuinely mean it, because suddenly they have this random floating emotion that they can actually go, that's the bloody question. I feel lost. Okay, why do you feel lost? Is it, what could have caused that? What could have caused that? And suddenly the brain is like the massive filofax or database suddenly goes, it's that, it's what he said, she said, that's what happened. Like, bloody hell. And it's like, and you see people and they're going, why have I not seen this? So it's maybe not actually, we're looking for the question to connect to the answer. We already know the answer. We're just looking for the question that actually lines up to it properly. So hence why when you are heard and someone either provides the space or asks the right question or gives that facility, then suddenly the answers and the stuff that has been free floating comes in, and suddenly, it's all, we talked about it before, it's like mental Tetris. You just, mentally vomit over the table all these, thought vomit, if you like, which would actually be a really good name for a book. But, this thought vomit onto the table, but you're looking at it from an external perspective now, a third party, and you sort of going, well, that would connect to that, and that would explain that. And then, well, we know that's rubbish, so chuck that off the table. And suddenly you can clink all this stuff together, or you can realize how ridiculous it is when you look at it from an outside perspective. And suddenly it is, people go, a lot of people leave my interviews and they go away and they're going, I actually don't know what to think. I need to go away and think, because it's so much has come out that they're actually going, how do you feel about that? It's like, I actually don't know. I need to go away and decide, or, and unfortunately they almost need to go through and run it back through their conscious process and going, okay, what did I mean by that? And, so then it sort of attaches all your beliefs back onto it again, but it's out long enough to, why does the expression, problem shared is a problem halved? Well, maybe that is actually the case, because you put it out there, you manage to chuck away the bits that are irrelevant. You manage to connect a few dots, no different to organizing your house or doing whatever. Well, suddenly, if you organize a drawer of socks and you fold them all nice and neatly, they only take up like a fraction of the space of this disorganized chaos. Because suddenly you're kind of going, oh my God, it's like, it's clean. I understand that it's all stacked up neatly in the corner, as opposed to stuff everywhere. No different to, yeah, so it is that, just give people long enough to sort of tidy their mental sock drawer, you know.
And is that a gift that you've always had? I mean, you were saying about you ask the open questions, you keep the space. But actually to be able to help people find that bird's eye view, or be able to look at things and say, well, actually that makes sense. Have you always done that, or is that something that's new for you in doing the podcast?
I think what's coming to me now, I suppose, consciously, I would say no. I think subconsciously, though, it is probably actually questions I've been asking myself. And that's, sometimes the question you ask is going, are you actually asking the question to the person in front of you, or are you actually asking yourself? Because saying, I even, and I'm conscious I do it, and saying, well, that's interesting. Can you explain this, this, and this? I've asked them a second question because I've not understood, or I'm curious if this is what they're doing. So I am actually asking myself the question. And if their answer doesn't make sense to me, I will ask a further question to ask them to explain. Now, in some ways, it's got nothing to do with me.
Are you finished?
No, I'm curious what you're about to ask.
So is it so you're seeking clarity obviously by asking more questions. So you're seeking clarity, but they're also gaining clarity in talking?
Mm-hmm. When you know what's it, they talk about putting your thoughts on paper, how useful that is.
Mm.
What's the difference between that and a conversation? Because when the thoughts are on paper and you can see them, or when you have a deep conversation with someone and you're just, you know, it's like a mental uh, offload. So I was trying to think of a nice word. Um, it's the same on paper. When you can see it back and you kind of go, that's weird. It's just a method of getting the thoughts out there. And that sort of sharing and putting it out, it just makes a difference. You know, when we can see it back, I suppose when you have a conversation, the words go into wherever they go. They're out there, and won't go into the whole this is the deeper side of it, but at least when they're on paper, you can see them back in front of yourself. So suddenly then it brings a level of organization, because it kind of go, well, actually, I can read back my own thought or my own thing that I wrote down, and now kind of that now makes sense. So hence why, journaling is quite effective. It gets the thoughts out, it sort of clears it out of the head, and then maybe tomorrow you'll be as passionate, or you'll keep coming back to that thought. And that's kind of how you know when you've got a bit of a fire in the belly. It's a thought that you put out there, but you don't just stop there. It doesn't sort of go off in the ether, and it just keeps coming back again. You're kind of going, hold on, I got rid of that. I wrote that down and put it out there, and it comes back again. You're like, hold on, why is it? And then suddenly someone else comes in and said, have you ever thought of this? And it's going, okay. And I was interviewing somebody yesterday, and they were saying to their decision tree for an idea, they will look for 3 signs. So they might think, right, God, that would be quite good. I'd do this. But then they'll look for 3 external signs to see whether it's like almost like an ego check. Kind of go, is that actually has that come from some space, a very innocent and non-egotistical, I'm not looking for praise, I'm not looking for connection or anything else. This is not trying to serve me in a different way, maybe something I want in my life or something, but they were saying if they get the 3 signs, then they know that's meant to be. And it could be a conversation, could be there's 50 things it could be, but yourself, because mentally we will automatically go, that's a sign, that was weird. You try and explain that to somebody else and they're going, that's not a sign, that's just, but you're kind of going,
That is a theme, isn't it? The signs, that is a theme. What are some of the things that people would tell you commonly that they would see as signs? It's a theme in your.
Yeah, there's loads of signs. I mean, and again, it depends. Sometimes, and we talk about all the time, things happen for a reason. It's I think if you're trying to look at life positively, something will happen. And people go, well, maybe that was karma. Okay, so karma is one that we sort of know in the general, it's bad karma. I put that out and something bad came back. So that's almost in the, and I love these little sort of sayings or things that float around in the sort of the normal language of, and I don't want to say sort of in the normal world, if you like, that people use every day and all the rest, but not realizing that they have a huge, it's a huge deeper meaning. So karma is one. I mean, karma as a topic is massive. And I'm not even going to start and say I know that much about it, but it's enough that funny how we've taken this principle and you go, oh, that would be bad karma. Oh no, I wouldn't do that. It's like, or, what is it? Superstitions. They're great as well. Don't kill a spider, or, put new shoes on the table. All these little things, and you're kind of going, that makes zero scientific sense. There is nothing in any science book that you're going to see, or probably anywhere for that matter, that's going to say new shoes on the table mean this. Now, if you dig back far enough, it'll probably somebody somewhere has something bad happen when they put new shoes on the table. I don't know. I mean, I would have to research. I don't know if you would ever get back to the, the origin of new shoes on the table. But isn't it funny how all these little things are in our day-to-day life and we kind of go, no, that would be bad luck, or, you know, what was it? Find a penny, pick it up all day long, you'll have good luck. And you kind of go, again, makes zero sense, but yet, funnily enough, we will lean into it. And, you know, you talk about signs and wishes, isn't it? I find it quite interesting when somebody can be extremely sick and would be what they would classify as a sort of a non-believer, an atheist or whatever. However, they will turn to prayer. And that's not a judgment on it. And I can totally see why. But yet, why would you pray when your belief is there's nothing there? I mean, that's a bit like shouting at the moon. It's like kind of going, okay, that's a bit weird. Or is it? So that's something, it's actually a theme that's come out quite a lot in a lot of the talks, and it's had a profound effect on me. Is I have a much deeper understanding now of religion versus spirituality. That's something that has come through a lot, and it honestly, it is probably actually some of the conversations now would be, if somebody was just sort of bouncing in off the street and first time they heard it and they're going, what the hell are these guys talking about? Because I love to say to people, listen, this interview, the agenda is yours. I'm bringing a whole set of spades. We can go deep, or we can stay here with the bucket and sand and stay at surface level. I don't mind. We can go wherever you want to go. So some people almost get excited by that. Some people, it's kind of, is it ego? Is it, I don't know, it's curiosity suddenly kind of going, cool. I'm at this place with no agenda. I can do this. He's offered to bring the deep spades out, and we can go and we can talk about stuff that I normally don't say publicly because people think I'm a bit batshit crazy. And if it was said out of context, it would look batshit crazy. However, if you then understand all the talk up to it, people sort of go, listen, if you've listened this long in the podcast, which generally people actually say out loud, past the 1 hour mark, saying, if you've listened this long in the podcast, then actually you're going to kind of know what I'm talking about, or you're going to get it. So even talking now is kind of going, isn't it funny that actually people go, if you like me enough or whatever, then, and I feel like I've pre-framed what I'm about to say enough that you won't judge me. So that's curious in itself. And it's kind of going, I'm trying to think something crazy which would sound, well, I've said it before, that question I asked that guy on the interview and going, why don't you just kill yourself? Okay, out of context, that's a horrendous question. In context, it actually turned out to be the perfect question. So that's something with providing space for people in general, and this doesn't have to be on a show. I think it's holding it in a I kind of struggle to be concise about it. It's holding the show as being held in a safe place. It's pre-recorded, so there is the option for it. They have control, they have choice, they have trust, there's connection, there's permission. There's also sort of rules in that, understanding that this could go out to the outside world. So some people, it's actually, it gives them a chance to actually say stuff they hadn't thought about, or it also stops them from delving into, being a time to give Aunt Margie a bit of a bash over something I've been feeling for years, that actually she said this, or Uncle Bob who said that. Time to really get it off my chest and have a go at him. By more or less saying to them, listen, I don't really want a slander case on my hands, and neither do you. So anyone that's not been positive in your life, I would suggest we don't use names. Refer to them should you wish. Heroes, inspirational people, absolutely. Let's use their names. Let's put it out there and be grateful for the connection. And it could be school teachers. It could be worldwide famous people. It could be parents, mums, dads, brothers. There's, again, even just asking people, going, who's your hero? Who's your expert? Who's your inspiration? Some people will choose a rock star, someone they know. Some people might choose their dog, but by asking a blank question, you get a very interesting answer back. You suddenly get a gauge of where they're thinking. Whereas if I said, who in your family is your inspiration? Well, suddenly now I've narrowed that question down for them. They have to choose their family when actually they're thinking, I don't know, they're thinking of Richard Branson or they're thinking of Elon Musk. But by just asking an open question, they can choose to add to it how they wish. It's a bit like my other favorite question, and the common answer is just a bit of fun, I suppose. I say it's fun, but there's a method to it. Is what's your guilty pleasure? And more so, people are picking up and going, I don't do guilt, so I have a problem with the question. So I'm kind of going, okay, reframe it slightly, going, what's your luxury pleasure? What's your little treat to yourself? And by the way, chocolate is probably 70% of people's answers. You want to see them smile, and that's like the inner child is just beaming. You kind of going, okay, you said chocolate. What's your go-to on chocolate? Oh, I get this and I do this. And I've had very sound professional people that speak on stage. Suddenly they're salivating on the microphone, talking about a bar of chocolate and how they'll actually go buy it. They'll eat the whole damn thing before the kids come home. They're doing all this. And by the way, they're being paid a lot of money to stand on stage, and suddenly it's like you see this going, and I just love the chocolate, and it's there, and I can sense it, and this is my go-to choice. And suddenly, and you're getting this enriched child just coming through. This absolute joy is just burst onto the page, especially after we've had this long conversation about the meaning of life and God knows what else. And it's just beautiful to see their character, and they're kind of going, just you just snap me into that place. And it's like, well, I just asked, what's your guilty pleasure, or what's your and isn't it funny how just a few simple words and in the right environment, and suddenly this all pours out, and you're kind of going, where did that come from? I don't know, who knows.
Yeah, and the fact that how rarely people kind of share those things or talk in that way, or feel safe enough to be open, or feel that they mightn't be judged. I followed a thread the other day, I think it was on that and chocolate, and we're talking about you have to eat a square of Galaxy and a square of Cadbury to get the whole thing, that was going on.
But you do on that, you see, get a beautiful insight into people and going, what does that look like? So suddenly they might go, yeah, so I'm sitting down with a bar of chocolate. Okay, describe the chocolate. So it could be this, it's a particular brand, it's a type, it's a dark chocolate, white chocolate. It's, and so what's with it? Okay, there's a glass of wine, there's a cup of tea, there's a hot chocolate, there's whatever. Where are you? I'm sitting in my house, I've got my PJs on, or I'm sitting here in a formal dining setting with friends. I'm sitting, and I'm the fire's on, they've got the TV, or whatever it is. You suddenly you've just burst past all the formalities, everything else, and you kind of go, and they're beaming from ear to ear, and they go, oh, that's just, how lovely is that? So that's, and you kind of, all I asked was, what's your guilty pleasure?
But it's the connection, really. That's the thing I'm getting today. It's the, you've talked about it a few times, but today, it's the trust, it's the choice, it's the connection, it's the permission, the control that people have in the safe space. How does it feel to have got to 100th episode and have had, as you were saying, like Mark Victor Hansen, Crystal Dwyer Hansen, Donna Kennedy, Pat Sattery, like really world-leading thought leaders, fantastic people to have on. How does it feel to have got to the 100th?
Out of body, I think, is the it's yeah, I'm actually really proud. I'm proud of myself. I don't, so much has happened in a short period of time, and that's, because people say, what's your fire in the belly? And for me, the fire in the belly and the fire in the belly process is currently my fire in the belly. That's the thing, is just going, it just amazes me every day. I'm up to doing, sometimes I'll be doing 5 interviews a day, and that's 10 hours of listening. That was yesterday and the day before. And people go, that's crazy. And it's kind of going, it isn't, because when you get a great interview and someone with passion, and you understand them, and they've painted the picture in their world. So if I judge their world, then it's going to be stressful, because I kind of go, well, I wouldn't do this, I wouldn't do that. If they've explained their world and you've sort of run it through your own filters, kind of going, given on all the facts, I can kind of understand where you're at, i.e. empathy. I'm understanding your situation. So I'm standing beside you listening. I'm holding your mirror for you, without you sort of feeling insecure or anything else. And I've warmed you through that. And then, you've come to the point when you've become okay with it, or you've built your success upon it, or you've built a whole new life and a whole new experience. And then the very fact you want to come on the show means you are wanting to help others. Well, that in itself is very energetic, and I call it my guilty pleasure. I'm sitting with someone and they're telling me stuff that they've never told anyone. It's like, how's that not a guilty pleasure? Potentially people go, well, why guilt? And it's kind of go, okay, it's my pleasure. Who doesn't love an amazing conversation and people to go away going, I don't know what just happened, but I am very grateful. I can't believe it. I thank you and all the rest. And no different. Listen, my inspiration came from Chicken Soup for the Soul in some ways, and Think and Grow Rich and a number of great books, and that you provide that space long enough and you keep doing it. You keep just going. I mean, I have people saying I'm mad. I've got, we can't put enough podcasts out because we've so many interviews built up, and so I'm having to look at other channels to do it. And then, I could easily say, well, listen, I don't know, only 2 people have looked at that interview, and someone else is kind of going, listen, the right thing will happen. And people saying, why didn't you just take some time off? But it's kind of going, this is, if I was doing a university course or something else, I would go and study for 3 years. And it's like, this, in its full entity, we're only going not even a year, and I'm hoping, the target is to have done 200 by the first anniversary, which would be in February 24th, I think it is. So that, but then also now part of me is going, could I do an episode a day? Okay, so technically that becomes a bit of a challenge, and then people go, well, you can't do this, and your subscribers and all the rest, and you kind of go, yeah, but bear in mind, it's not necessarily always my story, it's somebody else's story. So not every one of the listeners is going to want to follow everyone's story. However, if we could try and categorize it in such a way, or let the person that's come on share it with their audience, then that feeds their audience, which ultimately then gives them value, which then ultimately gives me value, which then builds it all up. So almost now I feel like it's a bit of a service, and I feel okay about, and I do feel okay about the spoil rate, as in some interviews will not go to air, and I feel okay about it. As other people go, oh, bloody hell, that was a waste of time, wasn't it? And you're like, well, no, I actually don't think that now. The right thing has happened. I've pulled interviews. I've told people and going, listen, and they kind of go, no, I'm an open book and everyone can know all about it. And you're kind of going, yeah, I'm not feeling it. Please come back and do it again, because I know we can. And every time, the second interview is always, to say it's an improvement is not. It's an evolved. No different to if you do the same talk twice over. Because you've done it the first time, it was a bit rough on the edges. Do it second time, and actually you polish some stuff off as you go through. No different to doing a second interview. So. Yeah, I don't know where it's going, but it's kind of going, I have just this fire in the belly, I have this hunger, this desire to keep doing it. Something's telling me to keep doing it. I'm sitting there going, could I do another interview in a day? Could I do this? Could I do that? And listen, we're talking because of the result of it. I'm doing a TEDx talk as a result of it. I'm speaking at different things because of the result of it. And I'm getting recommendations, referrals, and all that. Now I've got people coming on the show and going, I actually have no idea, because some people go, how did you reach out to me, or how did you know? And at first I'm kind of going, I need to do a fair bit of Googling and searching to find out how we were connected. We are connected for a reason, but chances are we're now on 5 or 6 layers deep, in terms of someone was on the show and they recommended somebody else who recommended somebody else who recommended somebody else. And that's why I'm talking to a 17-year-old in Australia that loves birds. You go, okay, that's a bit weird, but okay, that's how I know that, everyone from Will Smith's going to be on the show. Gabor Mate, Jordan Peterson, there'll be a man crush on that one. There's loads, but I mean, that sort of 10.
I'll help you that day.
Yeah. And I was sort of saying the other day, it's like, I actually, you know, I was like, I wonder what the interview would be like. And it's kind of going, do you know, I almost rather not go there with the intention of the interview. I'd rather go there with the intention of connecting. If an interview comes out of it, if, you know, other people can learn, but just trusting that the right thing will happen. You know, whereas if you go in and you can see it and people going, oh, I've got this guest and I'm going to fire them, you know, questions they've never been asked. And then I've got 40 questions and I've got 30 minutes to ask them and all the rest. And it doesn't hit a flow. You know, sometimes as well, when you think about, you know, with talking to people and going through, actually, that you sort of realize that people don't remember the entire conversation. They'll take away one or two snippets or sentences, and that's enough. So you don't need to ram in, you know, 30 years of experience. It's actually something I need to be careful of when we interview, is because unintentionally you can focus on something that maybe is just, it's in their mind at that time. You know, and you got to be careful it doesn't actually taint the whole interview. You know, they're having a bad day. Well, suddenly they come on and do an interview, and it's kind of everyone's going a bit like, that was a strange energy. You know, they just weren't that upbeat. Yeah, it could be because they've just fell out with a cat, and you know, the dog's just done something, and you know, the car's just done this, and you know, so they come onto your show and kind of going, yeah, talk to me about your passions. Yeah, passions, right? Okay. So that's also why a second interview can be very productive, you know, and also getting people back on. I mean, there's Pat Slattery is probably the you know, well, it'd be actually Pat and yourself are probably the two most reoccurring guests on. Has that evolved? Absolutely. You know, has the questions got better, cleaner, you know, quicker, fast? Absolutely. There's so much has come on, but that's again no different to a child walking or learning or a muscle, whatever. You get to know the person's frequency, their pattern, their, you know, trust and respect is built in from the start, you know, so you're not having to do all that. So yeah, loads.
I think one of the most amazing things is just to hear you say that's your fire in the belly, that you've found it. You've went from like trying to find a flame, find a flicker maybe a few years ago, and you found your fire in the belly, and to hear you say like you trust it. And I think that is the thing that really comes across. And for me to hear you say that a lot of the times you're not sure how you've got to people, and but you said there it's because people are recommending you, and that's the biggest for me. And I'm sure for a lot of people who've been listening or watching your show, you know, that's the biggest recommendation, that they have got so much out of it that they want to connect you to others. It's a pretty huge thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's I don't fully comprehend, you know, I don't like the full power and the comprehension of everything that goes on. It just I don't it just hasn't sunk in yet. And even the ripple effect, you know, what goes on and conversations I may or may never ever hear. You know, literally somebody reached out to me last week. I have no idea who they are. And they were like, you know, it's made such a difference in my life. I know they weren't a guest. I don't know what episode they listened to or made a difference. And you know, and I've no, but I think whereas before, you know, you sort of ego might have jumped in and what did you see and what did you hear and all the rest. And now I just trust and go on, that's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. And yeah, it's inspiring and you know, yeah, sort of who knows? Just being open enough to let it flow and get out there, and what will be will be.
Listen, thank you very much for that, Pete. I think that's where we'll leave it today. That was it's a lovely place to leave it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.